Welcome to the latest episode of The Independent. I'm Pete Sampson, joined as always by my co-host Matt Fortuna. Today on the show, Father Nate Wills joins to talk about his book, Pray Like a Champion Today. Also, Matt, I'm sure we'll talk a little Shane Gillis. Truly the yin and yang of Notre Dame football podcasts, Shane Gillis and a priest. But how are you feeling about this weekend? You're coming out. Your return to Notre Dame Stadium.
I'm playing too. I'm doing Oregon Northwestern Big Noon at 11 a.m. local time. And then I'm hitting the road to South Bend when that one ends. So I'll see what's A&M's not a top 10 team.
That one ends after the first quarter, right?
Probably. I just want to see if Oregon brings a giant inflatable duck to Lake Michigan to oversee the entire game. And maybe say hi to Brady Quinn. I don't know. We'll see. By the way, we'll get to your story there. Did not have on my bingo card Brady Quinn having the dirtiest quote in a Shane Gillis story. Learn something new every time I read Pete Sampson.
Yeah, no, it was the dirtiest thing that made it past my editors. So yeah, but there were a lot of good anecdotes in that story. It was fun. It was fun to put together.
I'm sure it was. Will Shane be there this weekend?
I don't think so. Yeah, I wonder if he'll be back for USC. I have to. Now I'm like cross-checking his comedy tour against. Notre Dame's home schedule. Not sure where he is this weekend.
What's with the Texas gear and all his commercials?
If I had a follow-up interview with him, that would be high on my list of questions.
He lives in Austin, right? I think.
Yeah. That's like basically home base for him. And I know some Notre Dame fans are like, how can he be our celebrity fan if he's wearing Texas gear? And I'm just like, all right, so he's wearing Texas gear, which Bud Light is paying him to wear. And then he can turn around and give that money to Notre Dame's collective. So, it's a small price to pay. So you can, keep recruiting rolling if you're Notre Dame.
Yeah, it was a fun read. I encourage you all to check it out on The Athletic if you haven't already. Pete getting a lot of time with Shane Gillis. And, Brady Quinn just coming complete out of left field there, saying Shane, and I'm paraphrasing here, but would give his left testicle for a Notre Dame championship.
I think you're actually directly quoting him.
Okay. It's always the left one. Anytime a guy says that, they always say, "I give my left." I'm like, all right.
Yeah. That's. I'm not going to take that in a different direction. But it was a fun show over the weekend. Like a good ironically dry run for selling beer in the stadium, which Notre Dame will do this weekend when A&M comes to town. I purchased, I think, two $12 Miller Lights in addition to like two $6 waters. So yeah, that charge runs up quickly. Notre Dame Stadium. Be prepared if you're planning to buy a gear at a football game this weekend. I think if you've been to any other sporting event anywhere in the world, you'll probably be ready for this sticker shock of that.
It's a night game. You'll have plenty of time beforehand to get lubricated. I want to say I have done this trip before in 2022. Ohio State played at Northwestern at 11 a.m. And that was at the old field, which is, a disaster. And I made it with room to spare for Clemson, Notre Dame that night, and got to see the field storm for that one. I was hoping it would be both Big Noon and game day for this one. Game day had other ideas. They decided to go to Tennessee for Georgia, Tennessee. And I think they were actually going to go to West Virginia Pitt if West Virginia didn't lose to Ohio last week. So I guess Notre Dame A&M was never quite in the cards, but maybe, I don't know, playoff game. I don't think USC is going to get the game day treatment. They got to get by Purdue first, which would have been a fun triple header within the Indiana-Illinois state lines, right? Because that's the 3:30 game on CBS, USC at Purdue.
You can at least give a high five to Boilermaker Pete and then head back up to South Bend.
If I had Jim Phillips' private plane, like your colleague Matt Baker had access to, where he went to 9 games in 5 days, maybe that could work. But I'll see both teams in due time, thanks to Notre Dame. So looking forward to a fun-filled Saturday.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, it's like the game is more interesting than it would have been if Notre Dame had beaten Miami. There's, I think, a little bit. I'm interested in your take on this. So I was on a radio show and they sort of described it as a must-win, and I was like, I mean, I guess it is, but it's not quite must is too strong. Like, it would be advisable for Notre Dame to win this game, but it's not like the season is going to come to a crashing halt if they lose.
No. Now, here's the thing, though. Like, I think it's very easy for me and you to say that and look at the schedule and say, well, 0-2, you could still make the playoff. You'd have to win 10 straight games, just like you did last year, and play playoff football every week and, prove that you're capable of doing that, which, on paper, they probably are. I think if you're in that building and you're, say, CJ Carr, a first-time starter quarterback, and a lot of other guys who are getting extended play for the first time, I don't know if there's anything that could possibly prepare you for the noise that follows you everywhere.
Right.
When you're an 0-2 football team. That part of it, you just don't know. That's not, the margin for error is so thin. They had it last year and they ended up passing with flying colors, but to expect that to happen again, I don't know. I mean, if they went through the same number of injuries they went last year, probably not. Also, the schedule is a lot harder than the last 10 games of last year were as well. There are every game would take on a different tone, right? If you have to go undefeated to make the
you
play.
don't want to be playing desperate for 2.5 months.
But that's what it would be, right? The trip to Arkansas suddenly becomes this huge game. Not that it's not a big game, but the USC game takes on a completely different tone. In addition to all the history or lack thereof that's going to be following it with that game to begin with. So you don't want to go into it's just no one's life is going to be easy or pleasant if that happens. And look, we'll get to our picks later. I mean, they could easily lose this game. In a nutshell, Notre Dame losing A&M is not oh my God, what's wrong with this program? But to start 0-2 that way would be not good.
No, it's I hesitate to bring up playoff odds and everything, but it is sort of part of the sport now. And at The Athletic, we sort of have a model for it. And I asked our resident mathematician, all right, so give me the percentages if Notre Dame wins, if Notre Dame loses. And I think if they win, they're a 75% chance to make this college football playoff. But if they lose, they're 41%, which actually is better than their percentage after Northern Illinois last year. So, yeah, and this is all if football is not played on a whiteboard, there's real life emotions and whatnot. And you're right. I think for the idea that Notre Dame is going to be able to, especially with a young quarterback, Notre Dame's just going to be able to weather the, for lack of a better term, you suck vibes around here. And it's also not healthy for the program to be out of the conversation of college football for 2.5 months, which is where they would be. It's not, and that doesn't mean you couldn't make the playoff at the back end of it, but to be irrelevant for that long after starting as a top 10 team, that's not advisable either.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is independent of how well or not well CJ Carr ends up playing. But if he's a quarterback of an 0-2 team after a quarterback competition that was behind closed doors, that most people there certainly suggested Kenny Minchie outplayed him in, that's going to open a whole nother well of questions every single week for Marcus Freeman and CJ Carr. So yeah, I just think the unknown, the parts you can't see around those corners are, the things that are going to surprise you or beat you or bring you down if you start 0-2. It was funny. I just as we talk about schedule and must wins and impressions, an agent texted me yesterday and said, every time I go on ESPN's, conference standings app, I always laugh when I see independent and it's just Notre Dame and UConn. Here's a free idea for Notre Dame. People there. Why not have a third bye and play UConn every year the week of conference championship games? Because you would be playing at a time when everyone's watching to see playoff stuff and you would win and it would be a strong last impression and you would get another bye. I don't know how you would schedule all that out, but it's not the worst idea in the world. And UConn under Mora is at least it's not a pushover anymore. I mean, Steve Angeli threw for 400 yards on them, but struggled to beat them last week. I think there's something to be said for playing when not many other people are playing.
Yeah, as long as can we put that game in Arizona or something? I'm not going to stores in early December.
Catch a basketball game while you're out there. Do a doubleheader with the women's basketball teams or something.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm gonna hard pass on that one. Yeah, but I mean, this weekend is there's so many interesting storylines just on the field Elko Freeman, the fact that Notre Dame has played Elko 3 straight years now. Marcel Reed did not play against Notre Dame last year when it was Connor Wegman, who just looked completely overwhelmed by the Heat and Notre Dame's defense. I really liked Le'Veon Bell last year when was that
Moss. Le'Veon Bell's
yeah, Le'Veon Bell is somebody else. I thought he was outstanding and then ultimately got hurt. So he's back. Casey Concepcion, who I liked going back to the NC State game from 2023. He's kind of a dynamic receiver for them now, and then, I mean, if you're looking more inward with Notre Dame, like your offensive line was just bad. I mean, they're bad at Miami in a way that like I just did not see that coming at all, and it's still kind of hard to process. So, I mean, there's a lot for Notre Dame to prove. I think that having a week off to get your stuff together was probably a real positive for Notre Dame. But I don't know. It's not quite like the end. Remember when Notre Dame went to Purdue last year, and you're like, man, I don't know what we're gonna get. I don't think it's quite that unknown of like, I don't know what we're going to get, but there are still a lot of things for Notre Dame to get sorted out, like against a real opponent. And, A&M that's a hell of a opponent to try to do it against.
Well, especially that defensive line. I know they graduate a lot, but Cassius Howell and Deshaun Hayes are just pass rushing menaces. Have you
checked their Instagram page yet? I mean, do they have?
I've not. Maybe I should. Howell had 3 sacks on one drive against Utah State in the opener. I know that's like Utah State, but it's still impressive. Like, they get after the quarterback. And if there's one like grand takeaway with all this time between game 1 and game 2 for Notre Dame upon rewatching and whatnot, it's just like, that offensive line just was not at all what like it was pumped up to be or what we thought it would be. We'll see if they continue the rotations. We'll see when Charles Jagasaw comes back, although I don't think we're really approaching that conversation until maybe November.
Yeah, Freeman was sort of asked about Jagasaw on Monday and didn't really give much of a timeline. Whereas, like, if it was close, I think he would have. So I think that's a good question to ask on the second bye week. And there's a lot of stuff to get sorted before then. Like, you got to roll with Gerby Lambert and or Sullivan Absher there. Both they were also part of the like, wow, the offensive line is really poor.
Well, and to me, there are 2 questions, right? It's when does he come back and where does he go when he comes back? Now, at that point, so far from now, we could be having a completely different discussion about this offensive line. But I certainly, like, coming out of week 1 was like, this guy was going to be your starting left tackle at the beginning of last year at A&M for a reason. Is that still in the cards? I think it might be. We'll see.
Yeah, no, I agree. That I think in terms of just access around Notre Dame this week, we unfortunately did not get a chance to talk to any offensive linemen or any offensive coaches. But, it's like, it was kind of are you from Texas? Come in and talk to the media. So we got Jadarian Price, Jaden Greathouse, and Leonard Moore to go with Boubacar Traore. But I spent some time with Leonard Moore and asked him about, getting beat on a double move at Miami. When's the last time that happened? He couldn't remember. And it sounded like the fixes that Notre Dame's defense feels like it needs to make, like, they don't sort of see them as like massive adjustments. It's like, I think there was a first game element to working Chris Ash's defenses, and we saw some of the confusion or, lack of clarity, as Freeman would say it. But I'm more confident about the defense sort of playing to type on Saturday night than I am the offensive line sort of like getting it all figured out.
That's how I feel. Just with the benefit of time, obviously came out disappointed immediate aftermath of the game with both sides. But I just think there's too much talent on that defense to not figure it out. And I think they probably took a little too much time getting themselves settled. I mean, you had a couple screen grabs. I know screen grabs are take them for what it's worth, but in your mailbag of like, they didn't always line up correctly or know exactly what they were supposed to be doing. I felt on the defensive line, as deep as that group is, they were rotating players in the fourth quarter who had not played much in the first and second quarter, and it just felt like they were trying to just see what would work at that point.
Yeah, like a little bit of a grab bag, right? Like that's grab bag personnel.
You would hope that that's sorted out before the first game of the year. Now, when you play Utah State and whoever it was, A&M played UTSA. Yeah, no, Utah State was last week. UTSA is week 1 for A&M. Like, yeah, you get the benefit to ease in. Notre Dame doesn't have that, but that's the life you choose. And it was disappointing to see how kind of discombobulated they looked. But I do think talent and depth there ultimately will win out. Whereas offensive line, again, coming into a game like this, I think you've said it. I think our friend Tim O'Malley said it. A lot of people have been like, well, Jeremiah Love's going to get 20 touches this game. And yeah, I think he should. I still don't know if he will. I mean, I'd like to see Jadarian Price get more touches too. Like, I'd like to see him just hand the ball off. And I know some of that's play calling, some of that's Carr just, making quick trigger decisions. But yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more of a rhythm and rhyme and reason to that offense other than just quick pass, quick pass, quick pass.
Yeah, totally with you on that one. Well, before we jump ahead to Father Nate and then take some listener questions after that. Also, I did want to give a shout out to our listener that I met at the Zach Bryan concert.
One of them? That's it?
Yeah, there are a few, but one of them came up to us like, oh, I love the pod. I bought the 4 quarters of FU football shirt on obvious shirts, and he was wearing Roback as he was telling me. So appreciate all that. But before we get to our standbys, Home Run and Pizza, a new sponsor of the show. Matt, I know you have 2 kids who are a little bit younger than mine, but I can tell you as a parent of high school and middle school athletes where they have practices and games all the time, having a go-to frozen pizza is a godsend. Home Run and Pizza bails us out more than once during the week between volleyball, basketball, and soccer practices. So yeah, Home Run Pizza, a friend of the pod, a friend of my freezer.
Friend of our kids, and for myself as well. I mean, at the end of a full day of watching college football where I forget to eat because I'm watching every game and covering them too, I could house an entire Home Run and Pizza all by myself, put it out of the freezer, and in no time catch up on what I should have eaten during halftime. Also, a fun fact, Home Run In is the original tavern-style pizza, the OG of cutting pizza into squares, real Chicago tavern style. Thank you to our friends at Home Run Pizza. Home Run In Pizza, excuse me.
Also, thank you to Roback.com, RHOBACK, longtime sponsor of the show. You can get 20% off your first order with promo code Irish, which probably that power listener did that I met him at the show. He had the gray, and I think it had a leprechaun logo in the middle, a fine-looking hoodie from Roback.com. So you can get 20% off your first order of everything at Roback.com, including the officially licensed Notre Dame apparel, by using promo code Irish.
Let's get to Father Nate.
Pleased to be welcoming into our podcast today, Father Nate Wills, team chaplain. You may have read about him on The Athletic or seen him on College Game Day, and he's now a published author. So not only are you you have podcast experience, you have writing experience, and I think everyone who's ever done a book, it is a labor of love and hate at the same time. Congratulations on it. Pray Like a Champion today. I've enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it a lot. She had some questions that she submitted for me to ask you. But I guess first off, congratulations on the book. And what sort of moved you to do it?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this book. I'm excited for folks to read about it. Thanks for reading it. I over the past 7 years, this is my 8th season as chaplain for the football team. And over the past 7 seasons, there were all these things that happened to me. And I was like, wow, that is extraordinary. Something that just a conversation or a moment that would happen. And there's a lot of kind of in-between times in football, like where we're just sitting on a bus or just waiting around for things to happen. And I just got into the practice of writing things down. I just, opened up the notes app on my phone. It was just like writing things down, kind of recording conversations, or I'd have an interaction with somebody. I'm like, you know what? That was beautiful or significant. And it really is moments where you see God in the world. You see Christ, just kind of showing up in the world in somebody's interaction. And I felt like, I would tell these stories to my friends and stuff. And often people would be like, you should really share that with other people. And, I'm a education professor, so I write, quite a bit. But this is something very different, to write down the stories about people in their lives and ways in which I've seen God in the world. It was just a really cool thing. And after a while, it just became like, look, I can't not talk about this stuff because they're just such significant moments. And I wanted to teach him. There's some like inside stuff about, what goes on in the locker room, or even like the cross, the crucifix in the locker room. I talked about some of the history of that and things that people often ask about. That's kind of what I addressed in this book.
It's called Pray Like a Champion Today. It is available for $18.42 on Amazon, as you told us beforehand. I didn't know Amazon was like amenable to negotiations when it came to pricing products. So good on you for that. What made you want to do that? And it sounds obvious now as we read the title of the book, but when did you always know that was going to be the title, or was it one day you're just like, oh, wait a minute, this makes too much sense?
Yeah. The idea of pricing it at $18.42 a copy was my editor, Josh Nome's idea. And as soon as he said it, I was like, oh, of course we have to do that. That is amazing. And so, yeah, I've learned a ton of things about publishing that I had no clue about, Matt. So I'm, I didn't know we could dictate the price either, but whatever. But yeah, no, it's been really fun. And, just to go through this process, it was challenging. It was great. It was fun. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's really the title, Pray Like a Champion Today, is what I chose maybe, oh gosh, 7-8 years ago, whatever it was, when I got on Instagram for the first time. That was an endeavor. And I just decided to start sharing these the holy medals that we give our players for every game. And so I registered, Pray Like a Champion Today on Instagram. And so that was kind of the impetus of this. And then on the sub headline is, and every book's got to have a colon, right? It's Sacred Stories from the Sidelines of Notre Dame Football. And I told this to the publisher. They're like, what would you like to call it? And it sort of was like, what would you suggest we title this? And I told them Pray Like a Champion Today, and I gave them the subtitle, and they're like, okay, that's it. We're going with that. And Josh and other folks told me it's uncommon to take the author's suggestion for a title, but they liked it. I think there's been a little bit confusion too, because people are like, oh, is this a how to pray book? And it's not. It's really about just stories of Notre Dame football and some of the connections that I make to our faith and to Scripture along the way.
One story that I wanted to have you talk about on the pod that I really enjoyed was the Drew Tranquil chapter. And so I was interested if you just sort of recount the story for maybe people who haven't read it, and just like as you're sort of rethinking that, the message that you wanted it to convey outside of just the story itself.
Yeah, that was a really remarkable thing. It's so it's in here. There's a chapter about Drew Tranquil. What an extraordinary guy, just deeply faith-filled. And this was my first season. This is 2018 when we were out in San Francisco, or San Diego, sorry, playing Navy. And I was just learning what to do with the team, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I got called to the locker room because Drew went down with an injury. And at the time, I think he'd had an ACL thing before. Yeah, okay.
Two ACLs.
And but this was his ankle they were really worried about. And our team docs, who I put a picture of them holding our holy medals there for one of the games. They sent me into the locker room. They're like, hey, go. Just, you got to go be with his family and stuff. And it was a really remarkable moment. His parents and I prayed together. And it looked really bad on the replays. Like everybody was like, his ankle's broken. And we prayed, and it was one of these incredible moments where they came back in the X-ray and they said it's not broken. And Drew later on pulled me aside and said, Father Nate, I heard it break. Like I heard it snap. And And I talk in the book about, like, I don't know if it was a miracle or not. Why not to a faith-filled guy like Drew? But it was pretty a remarkable moment. That was actually the first moment where I was like, I gotta start writing this stuff down. And thank God. I mean, all these years later, I look back at my notes and they're like incredibly detailed about what I said, what we prayed about, and I was like, oh, thank God, because I wouldn't have remembered this stuff. But it was such an extraordinary moment where I was just moved to say, like, I have to write this down.
My daughter broke her arm on the monkey bars last night. We were at the ER for 3 hours, so I may ask you for a private prayer once we're off air here. But she's in one piece at 6 years old, a lot tougher than I am. You had Marcus Freeman write the foreword. What's that process like? And I always wondered, I've never written a book. Do they actually write it themselves? Is it ghostwritten? How's that process go?
Yeah, he was so kind. I wrote him. Honestly, there were maybe like 2 weeks. My editor kept saying, like, did you ask Freeman about writing the foreword? I'm like, no, I didn't yet. And I had like this email sort of like written, and I'm like, I don't know. And I sent it to him, and I'm like, just later that day checking, because he's got so much going. I mean, he's the nicest guy in the world, but everybody wants something from him. I mean, there's been twice this week when somebody has asked me something from him, like, will he come on my podcast, or can we do things? And I'm like, look, he's got a job, and this is incredibly busy, and everybody just wants a piece. I was like, oh, I don't know if I should even ask him. And like 2 weeks went by, and I hadn't heard anything from him. And I went back to the Goog. I just happened by, and he was in his office, and I was like, hey, what do you think about that? And he's like, oh yeah, I said yes right away. Didn't I? I'm like, you did not. And it was like one of the messages he thought he sent, and he was so generous. He was like, yeah, I'd be happy to do it. And I mean, the guy is so kind, and even when I got the first, he said, I'll do it if you give me the first copy. And I'm like, okay, absolutely, it's yours. And then I brought it over, and I asked him, like, can we actually film this? And he's like, no problem. So I mean, like, another incredibly generous thing. So he was so kind to do it. And I don't know anything about the process. It was funny. My editor actually came back and said, a couple things, like, oh, let's change this. And our communications director was like, well, do you want his voice to be his voice or not? And I said, we're not changing anything. Like, this will be exactly as he wrote it, and that's what we're going with. And I love it.
There was another chapter that struck me just about the 11th commandment that you reference. And I thought, when I was reading that, I thought about stuff that I've heard Marcus say about, every player's journey is their own. Like, you may want the Kyle Hamilton journey, but you may end up with more like the Xavier Watts journey, where it takes a while. And as I was reading it and I'm thinking about some of your messages at the Mass, and like, how much sort of crossover is there with the head football coach in terms of his messages to the team? And did you ever hear him say stuff where you're like, oh yeah, I can see how that would apply to a message that I want to give, in a homily or something? Because it seems like, I'm not trying to compare the two, but they're both leadership positions. You have people are following you. I was curious if you sort of see some crossover there.
Yeah, it's beautifully, and in fact, that's part of the impetus of the book. There's so many things. So, for example, his line that he just says, "Choose hard," right, all over and over again. Yep. And they so much so they had it on t-shirts and stuff. And I talked about the way that this relates to the Christian life of us choosing hard and doing those things. And it really is. we're in the business of inspiration. We're, in the process of really trying to help people become their best selves. I mean, that's what he's doing as a coach. And that's ultimately the role of a priest, is to call people out to be, who God is calling you to be in life, while I'm trying to do it myself. Right. So I really do think there's a lot of crossover. There have been a couple moments when Coach Freeman has referenced something I've said in a homily in his like locker room talk or something, and I'm always just like, oh my gosh, that's so kind, and that's great. we tend to be on the same page with a lot of things, and that's really awesome too. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly times when, and you'll find it all throughout this book. There are moments where I've drawn inspiration from the things that he said, and have challenged me as a person, as a disciple of Christ. To be better and elevate my own practice. That's one of the things he constantly talks about, elevating, right? And it's so, I hear these things so much that it's like part of my normal lexicon, which is kind of fun.
Has he or anyone in the program ever said no to you for anything? Because I feel like you answered a higher power than them. Like you said, like you were afraid to ask him. Like,
oh my
gosh, what have you asked that they've been like, no, Father, get away from here?
many times. They're very kind and generous to me, but no. I try to limit my asks to things, and people are all across all of football have been so kind and generous to me. So no, but there's not, I don't think they would say like, oh yeah, carte blanche, whatever. No, and you look, like I say, everybody's dealing with limited resources, especially time. And so you just try not to ask. And I recognize too that for our student athletes, I mean, they're trying to go to class, they're trying to do stuff. I don't want to put more burdens on them. And I try to make myself available as much as possible, and try to make things as easy as possible for them.
I was interested. I think there was also some you mentioned sort of the choose hard and like drawing from the football program in the book. I think another one, that a story in there that was kind of, I don't know, instructive about who Marcus Freeman is, about how inclusive he is of you, of like, you're with me, like, let me go introduce you. Let me put in the time to like make sure you're part of our group. As you've sort of, I know, been on College Game Day, do this book a little, like, do more people know who you are? Like, you feel like there's a little bit like you come into it where people are like, oh yeah, Father Nate, we know Father Nate, opposed to when you got on the job and you're like, do I belong here? Which way do I go on the walk from the Goog to the stadium? Like, now sort of everyone knows.
Yeah, that's not the case. No, it's, I mean, within a very small subset, usually, of like Catholic Notre Dame football fans who happen to like be interested in what I'm doing, like maybe, but no, I don't think so. It's funny. One of my best friends, Father Pete McCormick, and I will walk around campus together, and it's almost comical. He gets stopped like every 15 feet. Somebody's like, Father Pete, oh my gosh. And he'll introduce me to folks and stuff. So that's what it looks like, I think, to be sort of.
Father Pete is the celebrity.
Yes, he's definitely a campus.
Not you, Pete McCormick, to be clear.
Definitely not. But I mean, it is fun. It's my colleague Frankie Jones, literally in the office next to me, has made a practice of like across campus. She'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's Pray Like a Champion today," and I'm like, "Very funny, Frankie." But it's very sweet. I tend to know some of these folks. A lot of our refs and folks who have done a number of our games. You'll get to know them a little bit, or get to know folks around football who are there, our ushers, you guys. I mean, I get to see folks on campus over the years, and that's just great too. I love that fact that you can build relationships, and that's what's really important.
That'll change that you're on this podcast. We'll get you a shirt that says 4 quarters of FU football, right, with your priest uniform, and people will be coming up to you left and right, I'm sure. When you're writing this book, I'm curious, like, you have so many private moments with the members of this organization. How do you decide what's fair game and what's not, and how much discussion with the subjects themselves do you have before saying, like, you know what, this is a story that should be told that other people can benefit from?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Matt. I went round and round with that because, I mean, there were so many moments that didn't make it into this book because they just weren't appropriate, right? Like, and they were moments of vulnerability or difficulty with people, and all of my work is based on trust, right? And building that trust. And so I thought it was really important to make sure that I'm getting, everybody's okay of telling these stories. From there's a chapter about Bo Bauer, and really he's really vulnerable in it. There's a chapter about my brother, and some of the difficulty, one of the most challenging moments of his life. And I, contacted Bo. I asked my brother, I read it aloud to my brother, and I'm like, hey, look, is this okay to say? And to a person, they were all just like, yeah, that's great. It was a little harder to get in touch with Drew Tranquil, which I had to do through a couple different things. And but he was great about it, and he was really and kind in saying yes as well. There was actually in the original sort of manuscript a chapter about Coach Freeman's conversion to becoming Catholic, and I wrote it and then I rewrote it and I looked at it and I said, this is not my story to tell. And I scrapped it because I just thought, that for me, that was too much. And he's a pretty private person. If anything in his life, is able to be private these days, but he's I think it's important to say, this is, a public thing, and this is maybe something that if he wants to talk about it, he'll talk about it. So it was important for me to get permission, and it was important for me just to do that my own calculus of saying, no, that's too much.
I sort of wrote this with you a couple of years ago about the prayer medals, that you give
nice.
to the team. And I was curious about, the national championship game, because you wrote about that in the book a little bit, picking out the gold one for, I think it was St. Michael, right? Sort of for the special occasions, getting outside of the rotation of it. And like, okay, I got to call big guns on this one. How do you go about that process? And I guess, could you give a preview of who you're going to have for Texas A&M?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. There's no exact science to it. I have a big spreadsheet that the former chaplain, Father Mark Thiessen, gave me, and I'll kind of work. We were on about a 5-year rotation of these holy medals, and so I'll try to work in some new ones. There's a new one coming out this year that I think people will be excited about. I won't spoil it, but we talked about doing something really special for the final game, and I talked to Jack Swarbrick about this, and I talked to Coach Freeman's wife Joanna had a request there, and so there's a variety of different medals for different times, and we thought we'd do something really special for the national championship game and do a gold colored medal. There's a picture of it in the book. But it's because we lost, I feel like we're probably not going to break out a gold medal anytime soon. It's more of a kind of a green jersey type thing. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? We'll see. So I end up deciding, our game against Penn State. I think we had the miraculous medal, and people were all excited about that. And so, I mean, you never know. But actually, it's funny. I actually have. I was pulling out medals earlier. I was pulling the little things off of the top and putting on the new split rings on top. So this is this week's for Texas A&M. It's Mary Magdalene, which is a great saint. The one who first witnessed the resurrection. She was the one who first who never left the cross of Jesus, right? And was his friend to the end. And so I think it's not a bad way to start our home season with this great saint who's all over the scriptures, just and for her faith and for the ways in which she was a loyal friend to Jesus. Not a bad one to start our first home game with the first witness to the resurrection.
When Pete said call the big guns, I was going to ask the game of who's the most famous person in your phone, but we'll keep that private for your sake. This may be a dumb question, but I'm curious, just as you were talking about A&M there, how far in advance do you map these out? And is each one like solely independent of this week? Like, is it, well, they're coming off a loss, so they need this, so I'm going to go with it. No, it's just all
No, it's all planned throughout the whole season. I work with this great guy, Greg DeCoco at St. Jude Shop outside of Philly. And, he and I worked with, what they have in stock, what they're available. And then, again, that 5-year rotation of of medals, so that we try to ensure as much as possible guys don't get repeats. Right. No, and I try to work with the Saints feast days, if there's something that can be right on their feast day or near it, which is really, fortuitous and kind of a cool thing to go along with. So last week for our Miami game, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was now, we had St. Augustine, and the feast day was just the week before, and his mother, St. Monica, was on kind of the other side of the medal, and her feast day was that week before too. So it's really, trying to tune guys into the liturgical and sanctoral cycle, trying to mix it up about, some of them are folks out of scripture, some of them are more modern saints, and trying to do those mixes. So there's no rhyme or reason to some of the things. Some of them are just like, well, this is a great saint, and you should hear about their story. And you never know when people are going to find inspiration in a particular saint. I had one of our former players who's transferred out messaged me last week and said, St. Augustine is my confirmation saint. Can you send me one of these medals? I'm like, of course. So I sent it in the mail to him. And so it really is, people find inspiration in all kinds of different saints and in their lives and journeys toward Christ. And that's really the idea of saying, hopefully we can be inspired or see our life in their life, and to recognize, we're all called to be saints in our lives. We don't always do it, but as we like to say, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future, right?
All right. Well, Father Nate, thank you for making some time for us. Again, the book is Pray Like a Champion Today. You can get it at the bookstore on campus, Amazon, Ave Maria Press. It's a great read. Definitely some good lessons, and some, if you're just there for the football, there's some good football too. So yeah, a lot of Pray Like a Champion Today, highly recommended. Father Nate, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, guys. Great to be with you.
Welcome back. That was Father Nate Wills. We thank him for his time joining us on The Independent. Pray Like a Champion Today, available on Amazon and wherever you get your books. Before we get into questions, want to thank a couple more sponsors. Obvious Shirts, OBVIOUSSHIRTS.com. Sponsors the show. They make great pod merchandise, t-shirts, quarter zips, hoodies, crew necks, you name it. Some great sayings from Notre Dame coaches and players as well. Visit our friends at obviousshirts.com for independent merch. We'd also like to thank our new sponsor, DraftKings. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back. Think you know the game? Put your knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. With live betting, rivalry week, odds boosts, and more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to own every Saturday. You can bet on Notre Dame, Texas A&M this Saturday. That line is down to 6.5 with an over-under of 49.5 on DraftKings. And here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings. Use code INDEPENDENT. That's code INDEPENDENT for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-977-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Whew, that was a lot.
Well, Father Nate was going to do it, but I think he might have his
yeah, I did ask him off air if he went to the concert this weekend and what his favorite Shane Gillis joke was, but he didn't. He skipped the show entirely.
They should be in a commercial together. It would be perfect. Yeah. A priest, a comedian, and a quarterback walking to a bar.
They've had Shane Gillis do a commercial in a church, and they've had Shane Gillis in the locker room with the team. So, maybe he could do the pregame mats. I don't know. It's just food for thought there if you're Notre Dame, if you want to take that to the next level, or maybe down a level. I don't know. I think it depends on your point of view.
Let's get to questions. Thank you again to everyone who subscribes and submits questions. You can subscribe and download on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and obviously here on YouTube, where we interact with you listeners as well. Where is the first one I was going to have? Okay. Sarah McGuire, can ND go to the playoff with 2 losses and no conference championship? In a nutshell, yes. Going to be a tough path to get there, I think. And there's another question here. Oh, here, that kind of relates to that. Archer 00 Arrow. Depends on how they lose, right? If it's the same problems, O-line, et cetera, then we have a legit season-long problem. Which my short answer to that is, if they don't have those problems, they're going to win against A&M. Like, I don't see them playing their game and losing, if that makes sense. I mean, maybe you see it differently, Pete. I just think, like, if they lose, it's going to be because they have the same problems that we saw.
Yeah, no, that's kind of an interesting point, because I think that they could lose in a different way to A&M with Marcel Reed versus Carson Beck. Like, those are 2 different kinds of quarterbacks to defend. Like, could Marcel Reed pick up 8 yards on 3rd and 7 a couple times, and you're just like, oh God, just like drives you insane if you're Notre Dame's defense. Like, I could see that happening. But I think from the sameness point of view, yeah, if the offensive line plays like it did at Miami, they're in trouble. If for some reason they don't give the ball to Jeremiah Love, they probably will be in trouble there too. You know, Jaden Grayhouse, 0 catches, not a good stat line to carry over. But, you know, I think it was Sarah's question, can they make the playoff? For sure. They would almost certainly be going on the road to do it, which makes going to the national championship a really, really difficult task. Not that it's easy to begin with, but yeah, it just, and for all the reasons we mentioned in segment 1, like, to play 2.5 months with that burden that's just not good for anyone's health around Notre Dame.
I don't believe this, but I'll ask if you do. I mean, do you think they're out of the running for a bye already at 0-1?
No, I don't think so. I think 10-2 you could sneak in at 7th, 8th. You know, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. And, like, you know, maybe they need Miami to go 11-1, win the ACC. Maybe they need A&M to be 9-3 instead of their usual 8-4, 7-5. USC not to lose at Purdue on Saturday would be helpful. So yeah, it's all those things. Like, I don't think they're out of the running at all at 10-2. And, you know, for a bye, you know, certainly at 11-1, they'd cruise in there.
Yeah, I would think so too. I do wonder how much, like, those last impressions of the SEC and Big Ten championship games. Obviously, the winners of those 2 will get buys, I would think, and
the losers would probably get buys.
I think the losers probably will too. Like,
one of them would, yeah.
We'll see. I mean, by the way, you mentioned USC. They've not won a Big Ten road game outside of USC, outside of UCLA. So,
do you hear that they have a new plane now? They've really thought this through.
I saw that.
Travel.
James Franklin's jealous.
I mean, I feel like every time I hear Lincoln Riley talk, it reminds me more of Brian Kelly from like 8 years ago.
Brian Kelly never.
We studied sleep.
Brian Kelly did have 8 in 5 years, but like much earlier in his career than Lincoln Riley is having them now. Holden Cotter. I don't know who's in that picture. Is it Drew Pine? I can't tell. Question: is the right way to be looking at the defense not flying around as much that maybe they are thinking too much under their new system? Example: early Al Golden days and USC game in particular. Yeah, I think it's a distinct possibility. I'd say the Ohio State game from those early Al Golden days, when they were, I don't want to say in position to win, but, you know, if they make a stop on 3rd down, it's a 17-10 game instead of a 21-10 game, and, you know, crazy things can happen. But yeah, I mean, they're different defenses, right? Al Golden like to blitz a lot more than at least we've seen from Chris Ash in 1 week so far. But I do think there's some catching up to do, and for their sake, they better have that ready for Texas A&M.
Yeah, it's you mentioned the screenshots earlier from my mailbag. If you haven't seen it, it's to be fair, like, the screenshot is before a play that turned out to be an incomplete pass, but Drake Bowen's turning around, trying to signal something to Don Schuler, who has his, the palms up, which is the international symbol for, I don't know what the call is. Like stuff like that. I don't remember a whole lot last year, although somebody in the comments did mention, like, look, Notre Dame's linebackers didn't play great against Northern Illinois, didn't seem to know what was coming at them. So I don't want to like canonize Al Golden here on this podcast because he's not here, but like, I still think that was pretty rare. And with Chris Ash, we're sort of like a 1-game sample size. So it's not fair to view that as like, 100% of what he will do forever and always. I think, but I do think like Chris Ash probably learned a lot. And I think his players probably learned a lot about how Chris Ash calls the game from Miami. And I think both those things would be a positive against Texas A&M.
Nick Vanley shout. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. As an alumnus, ND is known for being the most intimidating atmosphere, although some recent night games have been better. What in your mind could improve the environment so it's harder to play at? You take this one first. I have my thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
It's an interesting question. Like I think that it's better now. I think one of the reasons it's better now is like Notre Dame fans are more invested in the program now than they were under Brian Kelly. Just because the head coach is a little bit easier to get behind. I think the stadium atmosphere and like what they're doing on the video board and whatnot, I don't think that has a huge amount to do with it, although it's good that they're not playing crazy train. I don't know if Venga Boys is going to make an appearance again this weekend. They have definitely done some like cliche stuff at cliche times before, but I don't know. My anecdotal take on that was like, I think that they do a better job now. They're getting better with the music and the timing of all that than they had in the past.
Yeah, I remember like my second year on the beat, Jack Swarbrick saying, we want this to be the Augusta National of college football. And, some people love that. Some people didn't. I understand what he was going for there. Now there's like, they no longer need to make videos saying like stand and cheer. Old people saying sit down. So, I think every environment's best when it's left to the hands of the people who are paying high prices for tickets to support their team however they want or boo the other team however they want. But I just, it's night and day from what it was, 10 plus years ago. Can it get better? I mean, anything can always get better, but like, I just think it's maybe the most unique environment in college football. When you're not in a conference, pretty much everyone you're playing at home outside of maybe USC and Navy is going there for the first time. And in non-conference games, even in the Big Ten or SEC, you usually see like a lot of hospitality as far as like, welcome to our campus. We want to put on a good first base. This isn't Ohio State, Michigan, which I've always appreciated. Like I went to Penn State. They were jerks. Like there's tons of evidence of it. You can see it. I remember my first game, South Florida, Notre Dame. I see some people who are tailgating and we're talking. A couple people in South Florida jerseys walk by and they're like, hey, welcome to Notre Dame. And I'm like, shouldn't you be throwing beer cans at their head right now? Like, we don't do that here. And I'm like, okay. But like, I get it. Like, I appreciate that. Like, it is different. It is a must visit site for the general college football fan in a way that other places aren't. And I think the game day environment corresponds with how into it the fans are, which corresponds with how good the team is playing, which has been pretty damn good lately. So, playing better games obviously helps. In Brian Kelly's defense, their home schedule, for whatever reason, pretty much sucked outside of like Clemson when there were no fans there in COVID.
Because they dropped Michigan. That's why it sucked.
So they dropped Michigan. And then actually, I guess you could say the Cincinnati one was interesting for different reasons. But I don't have a whole lot to like pick apart with it right now. Like I don't like, if you want to be louder, chant louder. But like, ultimately, I think it's in the hands of the fans. You can't force crazy train. You can't force traditions that aren't really traditions. I get all that, but like, I'm very pleased with the experience there.
I think it's worth noting, like, look, two of the best home environments I can remember from 25 years on the beat were Ohio State in 23 and Indiana last year.
Yeah.
Like those were awesome. They killed it with those. So yeah, I think that, Notre Dame's kind of in a good way right now. Like there are things I should tweak, like maybe the stadium announcer would not be a thing, but like overall, I think they do a good job.
Yeah. I watching that Indiana one from afar and then obviously watching the rest of the playoff games, and there's something to be said for being the first, but it was like, yeah, that looks pretty perfect right now.
Yeah.
And when the way they entered with the bagpipes at night, behind the game day set. Like that was really, really, really cool. Archer Arrow again. Archer 00 Arrow again. Yeah, I was going to bring this up. He says, yeah, I feel like Elko will have better success confusing Carr than Miami. I was going to just say the Elko angle to this. I talked with someone, I know you talk with a lot, and I said, are you coming to this game? And he said, no, it never works out for me because it's always a close game. And, it's tough. It's tough to see Mike Elko lose like that. Like for a guy who worked at Notre Dame to lose back-to-back years at two different schools to Notre Dame in completely different yet in some ways equally heartbreaking fashion. We know this guy coaches with a chip on his shoulder. I do wonder if like that angle of this whole game is being overlooked in a sense. I know the players are the ones who are out there who need to make plays, but like there is like a respectful / budding rivalry, I feel like, between these two former Notre Dame defense coordinators.
Could be. I mean, I think the story there is more Elko is a really damn good coach.
Yeah.
And the confusing Carr would be part of it. Like, look, it's just because you have a connection to a school doesn't mean you can't lose to them 3 times in a row. I can think of somebody who's lost to a school.
Okay, Shane Gillis, waiting for the pause there.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean I don't think the 3 in a row has a lot to do with that story, but I just think Mike Elko is a really damn good football coach, and he's going to give CJ Carr some stuff that he doesn't know what he's looking at, which is yet another reason to give the ball to Jeremiah Love.
Juan Jose Rodriguez, what's up, buddy? Which position groups play against Miami, and that group's matchup with A&M gives you the most hope going to Saturday, not necessarily based solely on talent, which I think we agree is running backs. Can I answer your question with a question? And this is for Pete, since I'm talking directly to him. But so DraftKings, our partner, has like a gazillion player props available right now. Usually these come out later in the week, but they're available right now. You know what Jeremiah Love's touchdown prop is? The juice on that?
Ooh, I don't know. What is it?
-215.
Okay, so he's scoring.
You would think. I mean, I would have thought that last week too. You can bet. So you could do like ladders with passing yards for Carr and Reed, and receiving yards for Eli Raridan to get 15 or more receiving yards is -1,560. So you're not going to really make a lot of money if on his first catch is what they're saying. But there are, I mean, they have everything here. Yeah. Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison.
Jordan Faison or Jaden Greathouse is more than 0.5 receiving yards.
15 plus is -401. So again, you're not really getting much. 29 plus is -127. They have a lot in here. Malachi Fields, 15 plus is -930. Here's the thing. Like we just saw a game against a good team where like 2 of their prime receivers went catchless. And I don't say this to say like they've got an abundance of riches at that position, but I think the way they play and the way good defense are going to play them, you're going to see 1 or 2 players in that box score Saturday night who go catchless. And you're going to think, wow, that's odd. It shouldn't have happened. But I kind of think it's almost inevitable, at least one of them. So if you're betting this, don't choose.
No, it's tough because, I mean, you would think, like, if we're just talking Pauling, Greathouse, Fields, and Faison, like, what, 17 catches among the 4 of them? But that could be like 7-7-2-1. Or no, it'd probably be less than 17. I mean, we're probably.
I'd say less than 17. Half those
12 to 15
are going to the running backs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Raridan will have a 4 or 5 too. So it's, I don't know, it's tough. Like, it was kind of interesting dynamic about like you come out of the first game and like, man, Love needs more touches. Price needs more touches. Greathouse needs more touches. Why didn't they get Pauling involved? Fields needs more touches. Like, there's only so many plays. And I think that was one of their issues at Miami is like they didn't really play that fast, and then they had a bunch of 3 and outs, and they had a pick, and it's like they didn't possess the ball very much. So I don't know. I think that if you have a better handle on the game, like if you can play from in front, then I think you can dictate where the ball's going more than, oh crap, we're down 21-7 midway through the third quarter.
Jeremiah Love, who I believe had 33 yards in week 1, 15 plus is -1,600. 25 plus is -4. Oh, sorry. That's Jerry Price. Jeremiah Love, 25 plus is -4,400. And then it goes to 40 plus yards is -880. which again, he did not do in week 1.
Yeah.
I'm not going to actually bet, but I would, figuratively bet that he goes above 40 rushing yards this week. But like, you got to get to 80 plus, at minus 113 before you don't get to plus money till 90 plus 125. So there's some risk in that. CJ Carr passing touchdowns 2 or more is minus 121. Marcel Reed 2 or more is plus 150. There's a lot of fun you can have on here. Or maybe not fun, depending on how it works out for you. But I was pleasantly surprised to see all that available, and it makes me look at this game maybe a little bit differently. Archer 0-0 arrow again. Which player is the most replaceable? I might have said Raritan before the Miami game, but maybe it's Leonard Moore. Raritan's like you need a tight end.
Yes.
And he's healthy, and he's played a lot. And he catches the ball when it's thrown to him. But, I mean, I would say that's the position that's most replaceable. Leonard Moore might be the real answer there.
I think Christian Gray could be after Leonard Moore, too.
Sure.
I do think that Notre Dame's cornerback depth, while they like Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary, they like them in 2026.
Yeah.
For 2025... I don't think the staff wants to put either of those guys out there at all.
Archer 0-0 arrow again, but this one's Pete. Obviously, will take this one. Pete, to use Coach Freeman sayings with your kids. Control what you control. Mine are similar ages and sports as yours.
No, because they would just ignore me anyway. Yeah, no, it's I haven't really dusted off a whole lot of choose hard or challenge everything in my house. I don't think my kids are necessarily like wired to respond to Marcus Freeman's phraseology.
We have soccer, swimming. We were supposed to start Little League tonight, all of which has been put on the shelf thanks to her broken arm. But as I told her, your left arm works, does it? No, I'm kidding. Which trend would be most Archer 0-0 again? Which trend would be most concerning? Great House Pauling combined for 0 receptions. OL looks poor again. Lack of pass rush. Questionable play calling.
O-line.
It would be the most concerning, and yet it's the one I go into the game most worried about. That, like, if the pass rush didn't work again, if the play calling wasn't great again, if those two go catchless again, then I'd be like, holy crap, like, I didn't see any of this coming. So yeah, I guess it depends how you look at it. Like,
if the O-line plays well, you can overcome the other 3.
Probably. I don't know about the play calling part, but ideally you'd be calling plays to benefit the offensive line. Corey Norman, paid him at over under on carries for Love and Price combined. I don't know.
Is that a betting line?
There's not a betting line on that.
Yeah, I mean, I Love it. I don't think has ever had more than 16 or 17 in a game. So I would probably let's set it at 25.5, and then we'll check back on the post-game show. Do you think that's a reasonable line? Might be a little optimistic even.
I'll go 23.5, but I think combined.
We'll take your line. I'll bet the over on 23.5. You're taking the under.
You know what I wish we could do? Remember those viral they got taken down. They're during the summer. There was that group that went viral because they were betting Angel Reese miss first shot of every game, and they celebrate like crazy whenever it cashed, which was often. If we could bet first play, I'd say it's a Jeremiah Love handoff.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah, very, very good odds on that.
Prediction time, as long as we're talking about gambling and
like
calling.
I like Notre Dame. I'm not super comfortable with it, but I feel more confident in picking Notre Dame on Saturday night than I did last week when I was obviously wrong. So I think Marcel Reed's going to be a pain in the butt to deal with. I have serious questions about Mike Elko's defense as it comes to like being good tacklers, which like if you're leaning into your running backs, that's a problem. I think Jeremiah Love was credited with 10 forced missed tackles at A&M last year, and I think Jadarian Price had maybe 6 or 7. So I think Notre Dame will wise up and get into more of a rock fight with A&M, which in theory should let the offensive line be more aggressive, which definitely will get more touches for Love and Price. So I go like 24-16 Notre Dame. If I was just going to bet the line, I probably would take A&M. I feel like that's 6.5 is kind of a big number for Notre Dame right now. But as I make my prediction, that's actually a Notre Dame cover, 24-16.
I'll go 2017 Irish. Yeah, I was more confident, independent of what ended up happening. I was more confident at the start of the season of the A&M game than I was the Miami game. But I do CJ Carr's first home environment, which I think in some ways might be tougher than first game being on the road from a mental standpoint. I think we see Mike Denbrock call a game similar to the A&M game last year.
Yes.
I think it's not messing around time, for lack of a better term. Kind of like the A&M game was last year for them, because they needed to win that one with that schedule and make a statement. They need to win this one. I don't think they're going to get too cute. I think they've had 2 weeks to stew and figure out what's wrong, correct it, and adjust accordingly. Would not be surprised if they lost. I would be surprised if it went over. The over-under is 49.5 right now. Now, the Miami-Notre Dame game, depending on when you got it, I think that was 55 in early August and closed at like 49. That one finished at 51. I don't think there'll be a whole lot of points with these two defensive minds going at it. But yeah, I'll go 2017 Notre Dame.
All right. Should be a fun one. Matt and I will be back post-game, late night. Not sure how we'll arrange that, if we can carve out 2 booths up in Notre Dame Stadium in the wee hours of the morning after Notre Dame, Texas A&M. But the Independent will be back this weekend with another live edition. Get your questions ready. Yeah, we're here for a group therapy session, whether you want to listen live or save it for Sunday morning and take your dog for a walk while you enjoy it. So until then, he's Matt. I'm Pete. Thanks for being with us on the latest episode of The Independent.